sometimes you hear people complain that education, these are the people that want to change a lot of things. They'll talk about how, oh, education's too much like it was 100 years ago. And I always feel like the one reason for that is that at its root, education is about that moment of, that leap, that moment of knowledge, that, I don't want to call it an epiphany because it's smaller than that, but that sort of connection between a teacher and a student, or student and student. It's that step forward in knowledge. And that was true 100 years ago. That's going to be true 100 years from now. So as we try to deal with technology and incorporate things, we can't lose that, right?
Yes.
We can't lose that personal connection between a teacher and student. So I think, and both of you in your respective school division have spent a lot of time dealing with how to make more of those connections as we talk about trying to close an achievement gap, as we talk about equity. Like we got to do more of that. But at the same time, as you deal with budgets, you also try to think, how can we do this more efficiently? You have to think in those terms. And that risks losing some of that. So I feel like we need to move forward, but do it in a way that never loses that connection and makes that connection real for everybody.
I would take it a step further, right? Because as you think about the future of education, the one thing, and this is what as superintendent, right? So this is my superintendent's lens. One thing that everybody feels they know is how to run a school or how to run a school division because they went to school.
Right.
And it's bigger than your experience in school. You know, the goal is that we should be making decisions that will be opportunities for kids that we can't even imagine.
Right.
So it is not something that we may have experienced. We didn't have Google when I was in school, right? I was talking to one of our students recently from my superintendent's advisory committee, and I was telling him that when I had to do my applications for college, I literally had whiteout and I had a typewriter, and I had to type in and like today I'm just thinking like they have this common app. So I think that what we're going to be required to do is to think beyond what we know, which is very difficult.
Right.
And as I think about Star Trek and everything I used to watch growing up, and how I couldn't believe, like, yeah, really they could have cell phones, yeah, they could talk to somebody, and now we're doing it, right? So let's believe what we see in regards to the future and start making decisions about what's coming our way.
It's interesting, you started by saying, a lot of people think, oh, we shouldn't teach the way we taught 100 years ago, but actually a lot of people think we should continue teaching today the way they were taught.
That's right.
And one of the challenges we have is, you're right, everyone thinks they know what a classroom should be, what student experiences should be. And the fact is maybe none of us know exactly, right? We know we need to provide a variety of skills, creative thinking, critical thinking, we have technology, but people, should students still learn handwriting?
That's right.
In the same way? Should they experience an actual typewriter? What are those traditional skills that we should keep? Because a lot of people still expect to see some of those. Right. But are we in a different place where thinking and working is different enough that some of those things actually should be moved off? Teacher lecturing is definitely something that we don't want to see. If you see a teacher, I'm sure if you walk into a classroom and see a teacher up there just droning on and on,
that's right.
You want to coach them a little bit, right?
Yes,
about how to teach.
Because we need more engagement, student engagement. Right.
Yeah. That's the model of the class, day in, day out, quiz at the end of the week. Something's very wrong.
Well, you said student voice, which I have to say, as a school board member, I've heard our staff talking about voice and choice. And it took me a long time to really understand what they were talking about with that, because it really is about them also pursuing what, you can probably explain it better than me, what they're most interested in.
That's right.
And as long as they're on topic doing that, they're gaining skills and knowledge and content and experiences.
And plus, I think that to be able to thrive in the world today, you have to be able to communicate, right? And I think sometimes the missing link that we have in education is the fact that we're not as like pre-K through 12 educators interacting with the industry, right? We're not talking to people who are currently in, whether it's the science field or the accounting field or the business world or whatever, because one thing that we are lacking as educators is we don't have hands-on experience in the world, right? We have our hands-on experience in teaching, in classrooms, in schools, and we're making decisions around what's best for kids without talking to the experts who are out in the world that we're sending our kids to, right? And one thing that we're doing in Alexandria as we are embarking on our high school project, because right now we're at over capacity. We have 4,000 students with one high school. We're going to have 5,000 in the next, 3 years, 4 years, well, really 5 years or so. But how are you going to run 5,000 kids in one building, right? How's that going to be possible? So some conversations that we're having with this high school project is, how do we bring our educators in the same room with our industry experts and talk about what's best for that educational programming, what's best for those experiences that our students are going to need to have to thrive in the world. And I think more school divisions across the country, we need to, as educators, because sometimes we think we know everything as educators. I'm one of them, right? We're like, we're the experts, we are the practitioners. Sometimes we have to really extend that hand and say, we need our industry, come in and tell us what our kids are lacking when they're coming to your interviews, or when they're graduating with a college degree, or when they're going into this particular profession. What do they need in the workplace to be able to thrive and to matriculate to make it to the top?
Yeah.
Well, the whole issue of the future of high school, what should high schools look like? And I know you're pursuing a different path, I think, than we are. You have one high school in Alexandria.
That's right.
And it's going to be very big, so you must have to figure out how to create villages or something, right?
Yes.
So that students can have a home, a place. We have 3 comprehensive high schools. We have a large program called HB Woodlawn. We have another program that we've just started called Arlington Tech that we're growing, and this is a new project-based learning program.
That's right.
But we have students, some of whom want to get career skills. They know they want to do a particular type of job, perhaps right after high school, or they want to do it alongside of going to college things. And we've got kids who want a completely classical training, right? They want to take Latin and they want to go up to calculus and beyond. And there's a full variety of students, and we have to serve every single one of them.
That's right.
That's what public schools are about. It's making sure every student in our system has the opportunity to pursue their interests, get that basic training, but also find a path. Find a direction that they're excited about, that that they believe they can do because they have mentors around who are encouraging them, and maybe have shown them that path because they recognize something in that student. But that's a challenge. I mean, you've got 5,000 students in one building, and we've got a number of high school students as well. We want to make sure that they all have mentors and the opportunity to really find something that they want to do and get started.
But part of that, I think, is understanding the traditional divide between college and career, is understanding the commonality, the critical thinking, the communication, the skills that both things need. And if you emphasize that, the student's education can start to look a lot similar, because they're both getting to those critical skills that they need to learn how to learn. There's course section variable difference, but you can serve both that way.
And I was just going to say that I love the fact that you said public education, we want all kids to thrive and we have to meet all of their needs, right? In public education, our kids come from so many different walks of life, right? Every child does not aspire to go to college, and that is okay. We can't say everyone has to go to school, right? And we really don't mean it when we say that. So I'm glad, and as a new educator, when I got into education 20 years ago, right, I was like, everybody's going to go to college. College is not for everyone, right? And there are other pathways that young people can still have a career and can still make a living, to have a family, and to be able to thrive in this world, right? And it may come through a career technical education pathway. It may come through some type of certification. It may come to going into the military, and I think that as schools across this country, we need to make sure that we're giving multiple pathways for kids to succeed, and not defining what success is by having that 4-year degree or that master's or that PhD. And I'm glad to hear, especially in public education, not just in Alexandria and Arlington, but in school divisions all over this country, that people are realizing that we need to have multiple pathways and we need to have multiple options for kids, and there's not a one way to teach, one way to learn. that we have to be very diverse in our delivery.
And that requires a couple of things. It requires funding.
Yes.
To provide a variety of options means you need, the taxpayer dollars to put these in your schools. But the challenge we have still is that while we provide a lot of opportunities in Arlington, we still see the traditional opportunity gaps that schools tend to see. So are we, as we provide this full variety, especially in those higher level paths, STEM,
Yes.
high level math classes, AP courses, the college prep kinds of courses, are we getting that full array of demographic groups in our
Thank you, Barbara, for bringing that up.
These different options. Oh yes, I'm a big fan.
The big E, equity.
Okay,
Equity,
but
yes.
But
Go on and on.
before we want to dive into
I'm
equity.
like,
But
yes.
Before we dive into equity, I just want to add something to that
She
because
took
I
it there.
agree. Not everyone is going to be going to college, and I think as someone who went to college and grad school, I try to socially, just when you meet someone who's in high school, not say, "Oh, you're going to college." Say, "What are you doing?" Let it be up to them. But there's also the background, which is a lot of occupations of the future, studies have suggested, require a couple years of additional study. It doesn't have to be 2 years of actual study.
That's right.
It's 2 years worth of study. It's a credential that takes 2 years that maybe you earned in high school. But it's that additional level beyond our standard high school diploma that we all need, and we need to prepare kids to have access to that.
We have to make sure our curriculum is really providing
Yes.
those particular skills or introducing those skills to kids before they leave us. And
Yes.
and I think before we had the mentality that kids had to be prepared for college.
Right.
Not kids have to have certain skills that then gives you options
Right.
to do college, because those same skills for college you're going to need if you go do that 2-year program that you're talking about,
Yep.
or that certification program, or go right into the workforce. So these skills are going to be required. And if we don't realize that you shouldn't have to be in an honors path or an
Right.
AP path or an IB path to get access to those skills, we're setting kids up for failure.
Right.
All kids need to have those skills, and they may have those skills at different levels. Just like the world, people have different skill sets. I can't go out and play with Serena Williams on the tennis court, but I can play tennis.
But see, I would suggest we actually stop even saying K-12 and talk about P-14. Talk
I
about
agree.
everyone needs the pre-K
Or P-16.
readiness, and 16, and really
P-16.
that
Take it
level
even
of
further.
achievement.
Yeah.
But and I've been talking about this a lot. I'm on a STEM commission right now, and thinking about that. Not just, you're right, not just the pre-K through 12, but how do you really provide the opportunity for everyone to go through those paths again, whatever
That's right.
whatever type. You need money. Once you get past 12th grade, you need money to take the next
Yes.
step, and that is not something that readily
That's very
comes
true.
to everyone.
Right.
You need those skills that what you learn from school, but then you also need that resilience and mental toughness to find the resources on your own. You're suddenly on your own after a kid graduates. They've got to figure out if maybe they get in the wrong class and it's too hard.
That's right.
What do they do? How do they find a tutor? Or how do they
How do you
advocate for
navigate that?
themselves
Yeah.
to, or go to talk to the professor? We got to make sure that kids are ready to be personal advocates. And I don't know what to do about the money situation, but if kids want advanced training after grade 12, that's not something right now that we provide.
But we do provide dual enrollment and thing. We do
During.
during,
right.
During
and that's important
Yeah.
to think of that idea of 2 years past. It can happen earlier.
That can happen earlier.
Yeah.
But that means that we have to make sure that we are creating a pipeline for that.
Right.
One thing that I always get into debates sometimes with some of my superintendent colleagues, because they say, in our school division, we're going to put all of our kids in the AP, or we're going to put all of it. And I'm like, okay, it sounds good and it looks great in regards to numbers, but are you setting kids up for failure if they
Right.
haven't had the preparation to do that?
Right.
And that preparation can't start a boot camp before 9th grade.
Right.
That preparation has to start in 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade.
Right.
And if we can make that commitment to start getting kids prepared to take those, more rigorous courses at the high school level, we're going to see a higher success rate, and we're going to see more diversity.
Right.
I think where we have gone wrong is that we have pigeonholed a lot of kids. If you're not designated as talented and gifted at elementary, you may not be on a certain pathway when you get to middle school, which then that's kind of a prerequisite for you to take those AP courses at the high school level. We have to kind of like abolish that. Right. In a sense, we have to, be courageous enough to say all kids deserve opportunities. And we're going to go and identify kids who have the potential, who may not show up on a test score, right? But who have the potential, who have the grit, who have the ability with the necessary supports to be successful. And we got to start that in 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And by the time they get to 9th grade, they're going to walk into those classrooms with the confidence. It's still going to be rigorous, but they're going to have the confidence because they've had some success many years prior to. And that is going to be the key. That takes longer. So that's why my colleagues are like, well, I'm not going to be around long enough to see that, right? Because unfortunately, that's a whole nother story when you got superintendents who survive for 3 years. That's it.
But
That's
how long have you been in Alexandria?
I've only been in Alexandria for 1 year.
All right.
But
so
I'm
you're going to
into
be there a
my
long time.
7th year as being a superintendent, right? So I hope that I can give 9 more years in Alexandria. It's my goal.
At least.
I think it's going to take 10 years. Pat Murphy in Arlington, he did 10 years. That's all I need. 10 years. 10 years is enough to see where your school division is,
right.
Begin to work on a plan of action, and actually see it through so that then it's sustainable when you're gone.
Right.
It's not good. When I'm the 4th superintendent in 5 years in Alexandria.
Right.
So if I'm the 4th superintendent in 5 years, imagine the inconsistency and there's no continuity and everyone they ask questions like, well, when are you going to leave us? And I'm like, I'm in it for the long haul. Like, you don't want people to have that mentality that superintendents come and go. It shouldn't be a revolving door. And it does take, board members and superintendents to be willing to make that commitment.
The system sustains because of that quality staff that you started our conversation with, the great teachers.
That's right.
And they are the very mentors that get those kids, can identify things about kids and get them on those paths. But they are best supported when they know that leadership is committed.
That's right.
It's one, I would say probably the most important thing any superintendent can do is make sure that
teachers
their
and
staff know how important they know they are.
Right.
And the school board as well. I
right.
talk about teachers all the time when whatever decisions we're making. We have to think about the impact on teachers. We have to pay teachers as well as we can. Again, there's a budget thing. But they really they're the heart and soul, the bread and butter, whatever you want to say, of what we do in our schools. And we're all basically here supporting them.
Right. And we are. And education, and I think educators, and this is something that I'm very adamant about, and I say this anytime I can talk to a public official, a federal official, anyone who's in office, in any office. Educators are the hardest workers in this world.
Yeah.
It is the toughest job.
Right.
It is the toughest job, right? And unfortunately, in the United States of America, we don't honor that position like it is in so many other countries.
Right.
Other countries, they put teachers up here. They're at the same level as doctors and lawyers and judges, and we just say, well, it's teaching, right? Everybody has had a teacher that's impacted their life to make them whoever they are today, right? And that could be good or bad, right? So that also, the power that a teacher has could be for the good and can also be for the bad. And it's important for us to make sure that we're bringing in high quality individuals who what I call VIPs, and it's not very important people. Vision, integrity, passion.
Right.
If you have that, regardless of what, because you got to have the credential to get the license, right? If you have the vision, if you have the integrity, if you have the passion, you are workable. You're somebody who's going to be committed to our young people and who is going to wake up each day and say, you know what, I'm walking into a fire today, but it's worth it for our kids.
Yeah.
And that is the kind of individuals that we need, in all of our schools. And when we get to that point, this educational system across this country is going to be the best. It truly is,
So my father was a teacher and then a principal. My father-in-law was a teacher. My mother-in-law was a teacher. My father-in-law passed away about 2 years ago. We were at the service, and he was just shy of 90. So a lot of his peers had preceded him. So not a big crowd, family. And then a woman came in, and no one really recognized her. I mean, okay. she came over at the end and she just said, I just want you to know, she said this to my wife, your father taught me English in high school. This was like 30 years before.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he had such an impact on me. I had to come back. I just read in the paper that he passed away. And I thought to myself, I worked for about 30 years as an economist. No, I'm not tearing up. I worked about 30 years as an economist. I don't think anyone's going to come to my funeral and say, thank you for being an economist. But the teacher.
Well, it depends on how the economy is.
It depends on how the economy is. But the teachers, you're right, not just the hardest working, but that most impactful.
And you know, it's actually funny though, you mentioned that they can also have that negative impact. And
That's
how
right.
often you'll talk to someone, you know, maybe someone in a pretty powerful position who will mention some negative stories.
That's right.
People remember just that one thing a teacher might have said. You might have had, you know, 179 good days in school, and one day where a teacher said something, people remember.
They still remember.
And of course, that gets to the training and tools that we make sure the teachers today have and are equipped with, so that they refrain from having those bad days. It's
That's
a hard
true.
job.
Yeah.
But they have those skills now to work with.
But
talk to
also
kids in a way
making sure that everybody in the school, from bus drivers to cafeteria workers, has some training and is supportive of the kids and,
Yes.
and creates that positive environment so they can rebound.
Absolutely.
Equity is everything. And so right now we're actually embarking on our new strategic plan. So we're going into our 5th year of our 2020 strategic plan, and we're about to embark on ACPS 2025. And you know, a part of this walk and this process is we have to do this work through the lens of equity. And we have to start with conversations around race. And a lot of times people don't want to talk about the racial equity piece. Even in, you know, our liberal city of Alexandria, right? It can be a challenge. And it's because it's just not a comfortable topic. But if we don't have those discussions around the racial equity and get into all the other equity pieces, right? But if we don't start with that racial equity, we don't bring people out discomfort, or we don't bring, people into discomfort so that we can actually grow as an organization. And you know, one thing that I've been talking about in regards to educational equity in Alexandria City Public Schools is that we literally have to meet kids where they are, not necessarily where we want them to be. Every child does not choose who their families are, they do not choose the house they live in, they do not choose the adverse childhood experiences that they may have throughout their lives. So we have to meet that particular student where they are, and we have to provide the necessary supports so that they can go out and do whatever they choose to in this world. You know, I always use Oprah as an example, right? And I use Oprah as an example because, one, she is just like such an inspirational person to me, like just in my life. I look at her as like just inspiration, and I think of her adverse childhood experiences, and to now be one of the richest and most powerful women in the world, right? Who came from, in a sense, humble beginnings. And who had so many adverse childhood experiences in her life and overcame them, and is now one of the most influential people in the world. That's an example to not only our young people, but also to all educators, that it is possible for kids to overcome these obstacles. So we can't determine what a child's success will be based on whatever household they're coming from or whatever parental support we're getting or not getting within the schools.
Equity is a fairly new term, I think, in the education world, but it's actually been a really brilliant development, I would say.
Yes.
And we just completed our strategic plan, adopted it last year. Equity is one of our core values. Before the tapes were rolling, we talked to the chair of the county board. He is bringing equity as a major initiative for the county board, which we're partnering with. So we're doing equity in Arlington. And I think what it's done for us in terms of how we think about the schools is we used to talk about the achievement gap. And that was kind of like what we had. But equity gives us this full lens, right? That where we really look at everything through that lens. So it's not just test scores and achievement.
That's right.
It's, you know, for example, we're about to hire a chief diversity officer. So, you know, what's happening, you know, with our staff and how the staff are treated. And, you know, what about resources and our students seeing themselves in their experiences every day, in the, you know, use textbooks so much anymore, but, you know, in the resources, in their teachers, the people that they have access to. So we could really look at this whole picture of everything we do within our schools.
That's right.
And ensure that we are thinking about equity throughout. And it's really, I think, kind of a game changer.
So I think that's very well put, because that was the problem with just focusing on the achievement gap, just like the problem with in education, teaching to the test,
Right.
focusing on that and not seeing that broader picture.
One missing link that I think many school divisions that we've missed is the fact that we have to make sure we're providing the necessary supports in regards to the social and emotional needs of kids.
Yes.
And we have focused so much on the academic piece and the testing and the extra tutoring and the extra block of reading and the extra block of math. And some kids just need some mental health support.
Right.
Some kids just need a counselor to help them manage the trauma that they are experiencing in this world. And some trauma happens even in a two-parent household with two educated families and who happen to be affluent, right? Because you can turn on the television and experience trauma today. You can walk into an office building and experience trauma. You can walk into Walmart and experience trauma. You can go to a nightclub and experience trauma, right? You can walk down the street and experience trauma. And it's having an impact on our young people. And if we don't address the social and emotional needs, we will never get to seeing any academics progress. And I think that is one missing link that we have to start really putting our money where our mouths are in regards to funding and having counselors and having social workers and having health professionals who are part of our schools to help students manage their social and emotional
and we as a
needs.
community, not just in the schools, but as a community, need to be more supportive in that way.
Another level of equity really follows what you just said, because everything you just said, more than anything, is about funding.
That's right.
We need the funds to be able to get the psychologists, the social workers, all the supports in our schools for those kids. And I have to say, in Arlington, our per pupil spending is $20,000 per pupil. I have met school board members in other parts of Virginia where their per pupil spending is less than $10,000.
That's right.
The biggest inequity of all, frankly, is the fact that school districts are funded by property taxes, meaning that wealthy, well-off areas, and some of them, of course, have put themselves in their own little box so that they can self-fund. You end up with wealthy districts that can provide those supports and districts that just cannot. At the end of the day, the only way we're really going to equalize across our state, not to mention the nation, is if we actually have a different funding approach where it really comes from our centralized government, the state. So that's
and the federal government.
At the end of the day, it really is all about money, right?
That's right.
Yeah,
because the challenges are here in Arlington,
yes.
but you're right, they're even more in some of the counties that are suffering economically.
And I think we should never forget that.
Yes,
I totally agree.
We can't forget it. And it's important for us in areas like Northern Virginia, where we do have a high per capital for our kids, that we advocate for those school divisions that do not.
Yes.
And that because we're in our areas, we're in Northern Virginia, we have people in our communities who actually work on Capitol Hill, right? So we have to make sure we're taking advantage of that human capital that we have to get the voice out and for them to be advocates, for not only our school divisions, but our school divisions who don't have that voice. Right. And if we can do that, I mean, we're one of the richest countries, the United States of America, right? There is no reason we cannot get it right in regards to public education. Right. And if we continue to allow the rhetoric that is out there about public education and how we're not serving young people across this country, if we continue to allow people to do that and to allow politicians to kind of like take advantage and use the public school system to get whatever vouchers or whatever things that they want out in this world, if we continue to allow that to happen, we're doing a disservice to the next generation. We're going to have the courage and call it what it is. Public education, it has been around, it is here to stay, and we're doing a fine job with some of the things that we're doing. Now, we got some work to do, don't get me wrong, we're not perfect. But tell me what organization, what entity, what profession is, right? There isn't one that's out there. So give us the respect, give us the funding, and then judge us on what we can and cannot do.
So I wanted to make another point.
I like that.
Yeah, that's right. That's very well put. I want to make another point about the equity challenge, because it's always important to remember the deep roots and the history of some of the problems. Example, I think a lot of school districts are focused on trying to recruit and retain more teachers of color so that students see themselves in the people that they're being taught by. But one of the problems is, if you go back into the history, because of things like the school to prison pipeline, because of unjust disciplinary practices, for a lot of students of color, when they were students, school wasn't the best of times. So as they look ahead and think about a career choice, some of them are going to decide, I'm going to go back there and fix it, but most of them are going to decide, that was trauma for me. I'm not going to go into teaching. So if we're going to start recruiting more teachers of color, I think we need to make it clear how we're doing things differently and how we're getting to more of a socially just in our schools and in our communities.
Well, you know, some of the research out there shows, I've been doing a lot of research on teachers of color, right? Some of the research actually shows that many teachers of color who go into the profession is because of their bad experiences.
Okay.
Right? So they want to go in to change the trajectory for others. What we have to do in order to change this pipeline of teachers of color is that we have to make sure we're beginning to pique interest in regards to education early. One initiative that we launched this year is the Coming Home Initiative. Come home to Alexandria City Public Schools.
Yep.
That means that if you, and this started with the class of 2019, if you graduated from T.C. Williams this past June, and you major in education, we're going to hire you 4 years from now to come back and teach, right? And we're going to guarantee that you have a job with us as a teacher. We have to start before kids even get to 12th grade, right? We launched this at the commencement, you know, for 2019, but we got to start in middle school, getting kids excited about this is what you can do as an educator. You want to have the most powerful job in the world? Become a teacher.
Yep.
That is the most powerful job. It's bigger than the President of the United States. It's bigger than the CEO of any organization, because you get to mold and change the lives of people who are going to become that CEO or become that president or become the person that cures cancer or AIDS or whatever else that is happening in the future that we don't even know about. You're going to be the deposit in that life. So we have to start speaking that into existence and helping young people to see teaching is being a superhero.
Right.
You're a superhero as a teacher.
But being supportive now helps a broader group of students see
that. That's right.
Yeah.
I love it. I'm sorry, I got excited about that one.
No,
it's a great initiative.
I could listen to you all day. You know, we have a Retired Teachers Association in Arlington, and they have a scholarship fund. And I was on the committee for several years, and they would actually go, they would get the applications, and they would go to our high schools, and we would interview the students who were applying for scholarships. So basically they were saying that they would major in education. You know, they were seniors, said where they were going to college, and they were applying for these scholarships. And, you know, it was always a diverse group of students at all our different high schools, different backgrounds. We'd have English language learners. And these kids were impressive. Yeah. I mean, we would all sort of sit going, wait, are we supposed to actually make a choice here? Because how could we possibly do that? So there are kids that are
get it early
young people that are excited about going, and I think they want to do it for the right reasons. And you know, I think that's I always had that same comment. Why do we actually follow up with these kids and find out in 4 years if they've applied for a job with Arlington Public Schools? But absolutely, we do have homegrown people who come back and teach, and you know, go all the way up the ranks. But you know, it is an important job. It is a superhero job, and you know,
And I'm going to make one final comment about teachers, and I just want to ask our teachers out there, right? We have to stop saying, I'm just a teacher. That phrase, I'm just a teacher, we got to get that out of our vocabulary. And I say that because when we speak that into existence, we become just a teacher.
Yeah.
And who wants to be just a teacher? You have to say, I'm an educator. I teach the world. I'm teaching the next generation of leaders. I'm teaching people to go out and to change this beautiful world. Like, I'm a game changer. I'm a world changer. Like, that is how we have to begin to speak about the teaching profession. And once we begin to do that, right, then we will change the image of who we are in this profession. And then we also can begin to demand how much we get paid. because teachers, when you set the bar high and say, this is who we are, right? This is what you're going to get. If you want high quality, you got to pay for high quality. It will change the perspective in regards to how much teachers are supposed to make, you know, in this country. And we have to start owning that. The good, the bad, and the ugly, we got to own it. But I just ask our educators out there, just don't say I'm just a teacher anymore, right? We're superheroes, we're the best. We can do everything.
We have to ensure that we're providing them a nice quality of life. That means keeping class sizes reasonable, getting them when they need training, you know, getting them the resources and training that they want and need so that they can be the best and do the best in the classroom. Stuff is, we started this by talking about how everything's changing, right?
Right.
I mean, over the course of, just like any professionals, over the course of their careers, they're going to need to evolve, learn new skills. We want them to be excited about that, but we always need to be helping them out and supporting them.
And to add to that support, I would emphasize providing the counselors and the social workers to do that sort of care and support that they can focus on their teaching.
Exactly. They need the resources so that they can address all the needs in their classroom. They cannot do it alone.
Because you're exactly right. You got to meet kids where they are, but then you got to take them where they need to go. That's right. And that's the challenge.